Hi everyone, welcome back to Witches, Dragons, and Drag Queens. My name is Natasha, and we are going to be finishing up this, whatever it's going to be, this project today. As you can see, this was originally intended to be a scarf. However, I don't have a lot of yarn left, so we might have to make it into something else. While we talk about that, I'm also going to be sharing my thoughts with you on Friday the 13th, the final chapter, and Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, both of which I have watched recently, and I said we would talk about them, so let's get to it. You might also see me referencing my book. This is just, I wrote down my thoughts as soon as the movies were done, just to make sure that they were fresh. So, let's get book. Start with Friday the 13th, since that is since I saw that one first, and also it was my least favorite of the two, so we'll get it out of the way. I did like that right from the get, this film did tie all three of the previous films together. You really can't watch this one without watching all three of the other ones, which is an issue that I had with the third film. As I said before, I felt like the third film didn't really tie into the previous two. A lot of previous issues persisted, though. It still had that issue where most of the cast was just there to die, which I'm not wild about. Although it did add some characters who were there to be more active in the story. I liked our final girl in this one better than I liked our final girl in the previous one. Her name in this movie is Trish. I'll put a picture of her here. My camera stopped recording on me for a second. Sorry about that. I'm going to get back to it. I was saying that I liked that we were getting connections to previous victims coming back who understood the threat of Jason and are like, we need to do something about this. I like that idea. And apparently, since spoiler warning, Rob dies in this film, as I understand it, Tommy is going to become that person for the rest of the movies. Which is, I guess, kind of ties back to like what I really liked about Tommy, which was the way he chose to handle the situation. And basically he chooses to do this when at the very end of the film by like he finds a picture of kid Jason who's like bald and when he's got like bald and stuff, and he literally goes into the bathroom and just like quickly like shaves most of his head to try and like psychologically manipulate Jason. And then when that happens and like they're able to like get Jason to pause, attack him, down him, and when Jason's fingers twitch, Tommy just goes ballistic on him and just starts wailing on him. And so it's this really cool image of like, you get this really powerful image of like Jason's younger, like this like younger image of Jason killing his current self, which is a really powerful image. I mean, the idea of like a child being this level of violent is impactful anyway, is already a super impactful image, but then it being hit, basically the idea of Jason being killed by his younger self and sort of wrapping up, I think it's because this was originally meant to be the final chapter. It's sort of this idea of like finishing, like closing the cycle, which is another aspect of this movie. Like, as these movies go on, like, I don't know if this was like meant to be the artistic or political statement of these films. I'm probably overthinking it, but I still think that this is relevant. There's very much an underlying element of cycles of vengeance and cycles of violence. Like, Jason drowns when he's a kid because the camp counselors weren't paying attention to him. Justice was not properly measured out. Like, which is to say, like, those kids didn't receive, the counselors in question did not receive proper accountability for their actions, which causes Pamela to basically to take revenge on them over and over again for all those years. And then which then causes Alice to have to defend herself and kill Pamela, which then makes Jason feel a need for revenge because he didn't understand the situation. But because Jason is hurting other people's family, they're not coming for revenge against him. So it's just this cycle, this vicious cycle of vengeance and violence and rage, which I think is which I did think was a really interesting idea to play with. Again, I don't know if that was the filmmakers or the writers' intention, but that's just what I took away from it. As far as the other characters in the film, they're mostly just there to die. There's this, two of the male characters have this thing with one of them calling the other one dad in bed the whole movie, and then it turns out he's not, and it's just like, I don't really, like, that just kind of felt like a waste of screen time to me, because, like, both of these characters die, so what was the point? In terms of, like, the techniques of the filmmaking, the main thing that stood out to me about this film was the lighting. I really liked the lighting and the way that they used lighting. Especially when it comes to the death of Terry. We don't actually see Terry die. Like, there's this moment where, like, we just see, like, a flash of light and we briefly see the silhouette of Jason killing her and then it's just gone. I thought that was really cool. In general, though, Final Chapter was probably my favorite of the Friday the 13th movies that I've seen so far. Just because it seemed... Which is largely, I think, a taste thing, because I liked this one because it felt like, of the four, it was the most character-driven. And I prefer more character-driven storytelling. Which brings us to Friday the 13th, Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. In terms of Friday the 13th... Sorry, we're not talking about that one. In terms of Nightmare on Elm Street 2, I really like this movie. I thought this one was really good. I really like this movie. You want to talk about character-driven storytelling, that was this. This is exactly the kind of thing that I go for. In general, I think I'm really going to enjoy the rest of the Friday the 13th, the rest of the Nightmare on Elm Street series. I'm sorry I keep mixing them up. Especially since, like, what gets me interested in horror movies in general is their connection to the fantasy genre. And these are very much fantasy horror films. The main thing that I really liked about Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 was the escalation. The way that they escalated. They took a lot of the ideas from the first movie and they amped them up. Especially through Jesse and how Jesse's storyline plays out. Freddy Krueger is already a very scary idea. The idea of a killer that comes after you in your sleep and you can't... The only way to avoid him is to stay awake. That's already a scary idea. The way that they escalate that idea was by having Freddy doesn't want to kill Jesse. Freddy wants Jesse to kill for him, and he wants to break Jesse down so that he can take over his body and act in the waking world. That is terrifying. That is a whole new level of horror, and I really like that they went there. And another, like, in general, like, the main thing that I think I really like about the Nightmare on Elm Street movies compared to other slashers, especially Friday the 13th, just to compare the franchises briefly based on what I've solely seen here. No one feels superfluous. Everyone in Nightmare feels like they're here for a reason. Even when we are there, even when they are ultimately going to be a victim, like, they're not just there to die. They add something to this. They're there to contribute something. They're not just there to die, which I really like. It's the kind of character writing I personally prefer. Which, again, I know that's a matter of taste, but this is my video. My tastes matter here. The other like main thing that I really liked about this movie was just how queer it was and how, like, quinky it was. Largely, most of the quinky stuff comes in the form of the character of, like, Coach Schneider, especially how Coach Schneider died, which was a lot. But in terms of the queerness, like, it's not just him that's queer. Like, there's implications, like, despite Jesse ultimately ending up in a straight relationship, I think it's pretty heavily implied that Jesse's character is queer. And Freddy is also very heavily implied to be queer. Especially when Freddy's got all this dialogue where he's just like, "I need you, Jesse." Like, what is that supposed to mean? Again, that's something, like, the idea of this film being queer, like, people talking about how queer this movie is, that's nothing new. It's just something that really appreciated, especially in the current social and political climate. I think I touched a little bit on the fantasy imagery, like, especially since these movies are about dreams and being attacked in your dreams and nightmares. Like, you get all of this. We get a lot of that really cool imagery right from the jump, like with the first, it's not really a kill scene, but it's like a nightmare scene with the school bus being driven into the desert and they're balancing on the rocky point. Like, we get that right from the get-go, and then throughout the film we also get all of this very consistent imagery of just, like, stifling heat and steam and metal works and, like, things melting, which is very consistent imagery. And then we also get, like, the fun effed up nightmare stuff as well. Another idea that they escalated really well in this one, whether or not what's happening is real or a dream. Like, there were so many scenes in this movie that I thought, oh, this has to be a dream sequence. Like, this can't be really happening. This can't literally be happening, but then it is. Like, the scene with the bird, where the bird, like, goes ballistic and starts, like, attacking everyone and then explodes. Like, I thought that was a dream sequence, and it turns out, no, that really happened. And it's like, wait a minute, what? And the explanation for how things like that really happened makes a lot of sense. Also, Schneider's death scene was kind of like that. I thought Schneider's death scene was a dream, and then it turns out no, like that physically happened. And then basically, like the reason this is happening, like once it's not spelled out that this is what's happening, but like, oh, your brain just kind of comes to that conclusion. Like, the more control Freddy gets over Jesse's body, the more he's able to do in the waking world. So he's able to make... sorry. I was just talking about Freddy making the bird explode, I think. Yeah. Like, the more he's able to control Jesse's body, the more his powers work in the real world, until the very end, where he pretty much completely seizes control of Jesse's body, and everything just goes ballistic. Which results in the pool party scene, which is wild, and the very climax of the film in the abandoned power plant, where crap really hits the fan. An extension of that is this film introduces the idea of sleepwalking, which was not like sleepwalking, but like no one really was really sleepwalking in the previous film, in the first film, and I thought that the introduction of that was a really, like, allows for a lot of really cool, horrifying things to happen. So I'm excited to see how they play with these ideas going forward. In general, though, I really liked the writing in this one. I really liked... There wasn't any... I basically liked all the characters. There was no one where I was like, that person needs to die. The dad, I wasn't wild about the dad. I was like... Your son is like... There's the point where, like, the mom and the dad are both realizing, as the film goes on, that something is really wrong with Jesse, with their son. And the dad is just being... I don't know if he deserved to die, but I wasn't particularly happy with him. He was just basically like... He was just being really mean and judgmental and unhelpful, and like, he's like, Jesse's on drugs and he needs a meth clinic. And it's like... And the mom is like, being a parent, is trying to be like an actual parent in the situation. She's like, hey, we need to like get him to a psychiatrist or something. Like, something is very wrong here. He needs a doctor. He needs like a doctor or something. And the dad is just like... I wasn't wild about that, but like... It never really went anywhere either. In general, though, that is my thoughts on this film, on Friday the 13th Part 2. Really liked it. Really looking forward to the third one. Might watch the third one tonight. We'll see. I think... How much yarn do I have? This is where I'm at with it so far. I'm thinking it's not going to be a scarf. I'm thinking I'm going to make it into... I'm going to fold it over and try to make it into like a little belt pouch or a satchel. But I'm going to make it just slightly longer first. So I'm going to give y'all some time-lapse footage of that, listen to some cool music, and then we'll meet you at the end after I have taken it off the loom. All right, I have gotten this all taken off of the loom. I just did that off camera quick. I'm also going to, off camera, basically fold it like this, sew these sides together and fold this over, so basically have a little pouch. And I'll probably find a way to attach a strap across the back so it can sit on a belt, or I might make a strap to have it be kind of like, wear it kind of like a purse. We'll see. With that though, that is everything I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Natasha of Witches, Dragons, and Drag Queens. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you. Have a nice evening. Bye.